Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our ongoing virtual learning series, The State of Pregnant and Parenting Students in California. My name is Dr. Quina Hong, pronouns she, hers, and I serve as the Senior Program Manager for Student Basic Needs with Michelson 20mm Foundation. I'm an Asian woman with dark hair, and I'm wearing a blue and white blouse. Before we begin today, I would like to acknowledge that today's event is being organized on the traditional lands of the Tongva people, and we would like to pay our respects to elders both past and present. We would like to honor all the ancestral stewards of this land on which we meet today and their descendants living in over 1,000 tribes, nations, bands and pueblos, communities, and native villages. As we get started with the discussion, which will highlight the lessons learned from implementation of AB 2881, I would like to first share a bit about the foundation. Founded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson and Alia Michelson, the 20mm Foundation is dedicated to ensuring that everyone, particularly our most vulnerable populations, has access to the equitable post-secondary educational opportunities that lead to meaningful careers. We proudly operate at the cutting edge of higher education to help forward-thinking innovators, nonprofits, and startups close the opportunity gap. We don't do all of this alone. Michelson 20mm is blessed with amazing partners whom we'd like to thank for helping make today's webinar possible. Ascend at the Aspen Institute, Blue Shield of California Foundation, the California Community Foundation, California Competes, the Education Trust West, and Tipping Point Community. Thank you. It is our hope that you find today's conversation engaging, inspiring, and helpful in your work. We invite you to join the discussion using the chat, posing questions in the Q&A box, and sharing your stories using the hashtag #StudentParents. And feel free to tag us at our handle at Michelson20mm. Today, we are excited to host this session as an opportunity to share the amazing strides post-secondary institutions have made to implement AB 2881 and look forward to the recommendations our panel will present. This tremendous victory is largely thanks to our legislative champion, Assemblymember Mark Berman. As we learned more about the challenges faced by pregnant and parenting students, it became clearer that a stronger approach was needed. With the partnership of many folks, Assemblymember Mark Berman authored Assembly Bill 2881, which sought to remove barriers to degree attainment for student parents and bring greater attention to their needs. This law was the first of its kind in the nation and represented a major victory for student parents. The bill, which passed in September of 2022, has opened the door to new opportunities for systemic change for student parents. Drawing from the momentum of AB 2881, we are excited to see a new bill come forth, authored by Assemblymember Berman and Senator Lamone, called the Gains for Student Parents Act, or AB 2458, which we will also hear about at the end of our webinar. To share more about the successes of AB 2881, I'm excited to introduce Assemblymember Mark Berman. Assemblymember Berman was first elected to the California State Assembly in November 2016. He currently represents the 23rd District, which includes southern San Mateo County and northern Santa Clara County in the heart of Silicon Valley. In the Assembly, he serves as chair of the Committee on Business and Professions. He also serves on the following Assembly standing committees: Governmental Organization, Insurance, and Transportation. Assemblymember Berman has had one of the highest rates of success in the legislature, having sent 82 bills to the governor in his first 7 years in office, with 76 signed into law. Prior to being elected to the Assembly, Assemblymember Berman served on the Palo Alto City Council while working for the Silicon Valley Education Foundation. He earned his bachelor's degree from Georgetown University and his law degree from the University of Southern California. Mark lives in Menlo Park with his wife, Amy, and their puppy, Maven. Welcome, Assemblymember Berman, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Quina. Thanks for that kind of introduction, and thank you to the Michelson 20mm Foundation and your partners for putting on this event. Let me just say, I loved just watching all the positive kind of energy come through the chat when everybody got into the Zoom. That's it's just really fun to see, and really grateful for everybody who's joining for today's really important webinar. I'm honored to join this virtual learning series again and provide opening remarks on our efforts to make higher education attainable for student parents. In the legislature, we're often, it's what have you done for me lately? And we're always kind of racing to do the next thing. But today I'm thrilled to be here focusing on the implementation of AB 2881 from 2022. Implementation is really where the rubber meets the road and making sure that the laws that we pass are successful and implemented in the way that we intended. It's really gratifying to hear the progress being made to implement AB 2881, and I'm excited that this webinar will recognize and highlight the best practices of our higher education campuses. Thank you all for attending and your interest in being here today, which demonstrates your commitment to these students. I am grateful to the organizers and speakers for bringing us all together during this crucial opportunity to improve the lives of some of our most vulnerable students. For me, AB 2881 was a natural progression from my work to address students' basic needs and security. I've had the privilege of championing students' basic needs for the last 5 years in the California legislature. I first learned about the scale of basic needs challenges by hearing directly from students who shared their very personal experiences with me and my colleagues. As the chair of the Select Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education, I held 5 hearings across California, and a constant theme during every hearing was students talking about their struggles to meet basic needs, including facing homelessness, food insecurity, and lack of access to health and mental health services. I also began to hear more about the student parents who are navigating college and the additional responsibilities that they bear. As we all know, the journey to and through college is challenging for many students, but it's even more difficult for student parents as they juggle academic demands while also raising children. The disruption of higher education learning due to the COVID-19 pandemic also brought urgent attention to the needs of student parents, whose challenges were compounded as school and childcare interruptions placed significant new demands on their time and attention. California Competes, through their research, found that California is home to approximately 300,000 undergraduate student parents. 61% of these student parents are first-generation college students, and 72% are students of color. As a result, addressing the needs of student parents can also help reduce equity gaps. Student parents also face greater economic barriers than students without children. Over 2/3 of student parents live in or near poverty, and student parents have higher levels of unmet financial need and higher median student debt. After learning all of this, I felt that student parents deserve particular focus and our support, which is why I introduced AB 2881 in 2022 with collaboration from the Michelson Center for Public Policy and student organizations. I'm so proud that AB 2881 has served as a catalyst in this growing movement to both raise awareness and support student parents by providing guidance and direction on how best to serve the student population. Student parents are getting the visibility and the attention that they deserve. I want to commend California's higher education institutions for stepping up to meet the needs of student parents, and particularly thank all the practitioners on this webinar for your hard work as implementation continues on campuses. We need your help to ensure the continued successful implementation, given the invaluable role that all of you play. I know we have a distinguished group of panelists from our higher education institutions who will be sharing their insights and best practices to support your implementation efforts that are going to make the difference for student parents. Since there is always more we can do, I also recently introduced AB 2458, the Gains for Student Parents Act, with one of my best friends in the legislature, Senator Monique Limon. I am thrilled to again be working with the Michelson Center for Public Policy, California Competes, the Education Trust West, and many more to ensure that student parents obtain the financial aid they are eligible to receive by taking into account their childcare expenses, as well as collecting and reporting student parent data to further advance student parent success. Identifying student parents and increasing their access to financial aid will allow them to better afford, enroll in, and successfully complete their higher education journey. I'm excited that you'll be able to hear from California Competes later today, who will be sharing more details on AB 2458. And I'm heartened that today's event, inspired by student parents, will culminate in hearing directly from a student parent. I also want to make sure to give a shout out to somebody that I'm sure all of you know my legislative director, Ellen Green, who has been my partner in really championing all of my higher education bills over the past 7+ years. And I'm very grateful for her leadership. And with that, I want to turn it back over to Queena. And thanks again for letting me come and say hi.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Berman, and for taking time to being with us here today. Again, this is our third time together, and we're really excited to continue having you part of our journey, and excited to see where our work continues to go. And we're so lucky to have you as our legislative champion for student parents. So as we continue today's conversation, our next presenters will share their lessons learned in implementing priority registration for parenting students, as well as how this process has helped them gather important data on parenting student population. We have convened a panel of experts representing the UCs, CSUs, and community colleges in California to share their wisdom with us both on the macro and micro level. As our panelists are presenting, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box, and our panelists will be happy to answer them throughout our discussion or at the very end. So now it is my pleasure to introduce all of our panelists. First, we have Kelly King and Betsy Regalado from the Los Angeles Community College District. Kelly King went back to college in 2022 to serve as Executive Director of the Foundation for the Los Angeles Community Colleges and Chief Advancement Officer for the Los Angeles College School District. Kelly leads strategic programs and philanthropic partnerships that support success for over 200,000 students served annually across LACCD's 9 colleges. And for over 3 decades, Betsy Regalado, Associate Vice Chancellor, has worked at the Los Angeles Community College District. In her current role, she oversees the student services and curriculum development. She has also served on the executive team responsible for migrating the 9 LACCD colleges to a new student information system. So after learning about the LACCD experience, we'll hear from Liz Reed from the California State University Office of the Chancellor and Laura Yeager from CSU Fresno. Liz Reed is the Assistant Director of Enrollment Management, Technology, and Academic and Student Affairs at the California State University Office of the Chancellor. As part of her role, she supports and leads the State University Registrar's Constituency Group and has taken the lead on implementing the priority registration aspects of AB 2881 across the CSU system. She is currently serving on the Data to Action campaign for parenting students, led and organized by the Urban Institute, and passionately supports this work as a parenting student herself. Laura Yeager currently serves as the University Registrar and Director of Veteran Services at the California State University, Fresno. As University Registrar, Laura assisted with several aspects of the implementation of AB 2881 on her campus. Laura is a passionate collaborator invested in policy interpretation and implementation with over a decade of experience in higher education. Lastly, we'll be joined by Heather King, Project and Policy Analyst for Basic Needs at the University of California Office of the President, and Marissa Weiss, Transfer Retention Specialist in the Transfer and Reentry Center at the University of California, Davis. Heather is the inaugural Project and Policy Analyst for Basic Needs at the University of California Office of the President and currently leads the UC system-wide parenting and pregnant student community of practice in collaboration with campus co-chairs. At UC Davis, Marissa oversees the process for student parents to receive priority registration, co-directs the Child Care Access Means Parents in Schools, or C-Campus program, and works closely with the Women's Resource and Research Center to maintain a virtual hub for student parents. So please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. And first, we'll hear from Kelly and Betsy.
Good morning. I'm Kelly King, and greetings from Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Community College District, and so happy to be here with Betsy Regalado, our Associate Vice Chancellor. I'll go ahead and kick us off with the next slide. Here's what we're going to tell you in our brief 15 minutes to begin this webinar. We're going to tell you about LACCD for context of what we're going to share, how we're using CCC Apply to implement this program. More about the implementation, including priority registration, marketing. We'll give an example from one of our colleges, and then we'll briefly tell you about some of our efforts to support parenting students beyond what's in the Assembly Bill. Next slide. So to understand the work we have cut out for us in Los Angeles, we'll go back one and tell you about our district. We have 9 colleges. We're the largest community college district in the country, over 200,000 students. So about 1/10 of all community college students in California attend one of our 9 colleges. We estimate from a bunch of different ways that about 1/3 of our students are parents themselves. And we know that a lot of our students are facing a number of financial and other barriers as they persist in their post-secondary journey. But we're also very proud to serve in a really important segment of California's college population. Our 9 colleges collectively serve nearly twice as many Black and Latino students as the entire UC system combined. Next slide. So passing it on to Betsy for more about our implementation journey.
Well, good morning and thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share the technical configuration that the Los Angeles Community College District implemented to identify student parents with dependent children in order to grant them priority enrollment and other services. The entire process begins when the student parent applies to one of the 9 Los Angeles Community colleges. So at the admissions process, 98 of the 116 California community colleges currently use the state-supported online CCC Apply admissions application to admit students. We began our technical preparation for AB 2188 in spring of 2023. The LACCD offered priority enrollment to student parents starting with the winter of 2024 and spring 2024 registration cycle. When we began the process, the first thing we wanted to do was to take a look at our continuing student population to identify student parents that have been actively enrolled in our system. So our Office of Institutional Effectiveness identified 15,868 continuing student parents district-wide, and these students were mass assigned to what we call a student group, the PNTS student group, used to grant priority enrollment. In this recent spring, this current semester, the spring of 2024, we've provided priority enrollment for 27,484 student parents. Next slide. So CCC Apply, as I mentioned, that is the state-supported application for admissions to the California community colleges. The CCC Tech Center added a student parent question to the online CCC Apply application. The question is, are you a student parent with a dependent that receives more than half of your support? If the student answers yes, they are automatically placed in a student group used to grant priority enrollment. So we download those applications on a daily basis, twice a day, and then we push these students that responded affirmatively to this question into the student group. Student parents enrolled in classes will enroll in classes, with other Tier 1 students. At the Los Angeles Community College District, we have 4 tiers of enrollment. Tier 1 is the highest level and the first students that enroll in classes. So our student parents enroll with students such as DOP students, DSPNS, CalWORKs, foster youth, active duty and veterans, homeless students, rising scholars, which is typically our formerly incarcerated population, and students who receive tribal temporary assistance to needy families. Next slide. The CCC Tech Center reported that they will be adding 2 additional questions to the CCC Apply application during their next upgrade release. So we're expecting this release to come out sometime late April, maybe May timeframe. So what they're going to add to that question in CCC Apply is asking the student parent to identify the number of dependents that are 17 years old and younger, and the number of dependents over the age of 18. So a student parent would first identify as a student parent in the first question, and then put in a number, whether their children are under the age of 17 or over the age of 18, or maybe a combination of the two. Student parents are removed from the PNTS student group if they stop attending school for 2 primary terms. 2 primary terms for us is the fall and the spring semester. Those are considered our primary terms. So basically, the student parent has stepped out for 1 year, then they will be removed from this student group. If they decide to return back to the LA Community College District, returning student parents can reapply to the college using the CCC Apply application and are placed back into the PRNT student group if they still have dependents 17 years old and younger. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about the marketing of this legislation. We've had various venues, but one of the most popular ones is the biannual registration letter. At the LACCD, we send out 2 registration letters a year because we do combined registrations with 2 terms. So we do summer and fall registration in one cycle, and we do winter and spring in another cycle. So in that biannual registration letter, it informs students of AB 2188, and if the student parent did not receive that Tier 1 priority enrollment date, they are encouraged to visit the Admissions and Records Office and request an earlier priority enrollment date. The Admissions and Records Office will manually adjust the student's registration date, and they will also enter the student's name into that student parent group for future terms. So once they're in that PNTS, they only need to identify as a student parent once. Once we place them into that student group, every semester that they are active and it's time for enrollment, they will receive Tier 1 priority enrollment. Frontline staff and counselors are also informed of AB 2188, so they can share their resources with student parents and direct them to the Admissions and Records Office to adjust their registration date if they were issued the wrong date. Next slide, please. We've also done some changes in the area of resources to make the different resources available on campus and off campus available to our student parents. And one of those areas is in the new student orientation. So we have added additional slides to the new student orientation, which is typically done online, but it can also be done in person depending on the college. Student parents are encouraged to complete the new student orientation before starting their first term of college. However, the orientation is always available for any student to go back and revisit in case there's information there that they found useful and want to hear it again. We've also, at the 9 LACCD colleges, we've updated our websites. We recently migrated to a new, more student-centric website, and we have a new site for student parent services. The webpage provides both on-campus and off-campus informations and referrals. Next page, please. I'm going to turn it back to my colleague, Kelly King, who will take it from here.
Sure. So we're happy to now share how we're talking about the resources that we want to get in front of students more clearly as a part of this legislation. And at times you might see that we put 2188. That was just to make sure you're watching. We are talking about 2881. I saw that question come in through the chat. Forgive any errors we make or say. So an example, LA Southwest College. This was one of our first colleges of our 9 that did a really good job of having a dedicated page on their website about student parent resources. All 9 of our colleges just refreshed their websites. That was a multi-year activity. So we were really primed to make sure it was clear and accessible, these and other resources for students. As we go to the next slide, you can see that there's many different types of resources captured on this page. We include information about state programs that we want students to know they have access to. As we go to the next slide, other off-campus services, whether they're public or privately available to students. And then finally, on-campus services. And I see lots, which will be on the next slide. I want to give a special shout out. I see a lot of energy in the chat from LACCD. There's great work on all 9 of our campuses. But I think LA Southwest College, you can see references to the Child Development Center. You see references to the Gateways Housing Program that provides support for students who are housing insecure. And the activities of these programs, plus the basic needs centers, plus the emerging work of a soon-to-be open Family Resource Center in LA Southwest College, I think shows the integration and collaboration on that campus to prioritize student parents in all that they do. As we move to the last slides, we just want to close with a few things we're doing beyond 2881, not 2188, as it says on my slide. We are doing a lot of additional internal and external data collection. I see Unite LA on the line. They're helping us ask some additional questions. We've also embedded questions about the student parent experience into our all student survey. And pretty much anytime we ask for students' feedback, we want to embed that experience within our tools. We've embedded student parents in how we're thinking about housing and basic need strategies. Assemblymember Berman in our warm-up call mentioned that he saw a scholarship program for student parents opened on a campus. We've gone from 0 to 3 of those in our campuses district-wide in the last 2 years, including one that is now endowed. An expansion of on-campus resources, as I mentioned, and lots of new community partnerships. So in closing on our next slide, just want to give some images of what this looks like. This is a shout out to LA Pierce College. I was attending on a Saturday an enrollment fair. So I brought my 2 little kids along with me because that's what I do on Saturdays. And they were immediately greeted by custom Pierce College coloring books. There's long lines of students waiting to enroll because there's a lot of enthusiasm. And they took my students and immediately brought them to a table so that I could focus on what I needed to do. And then it's Pierce College, so there's a petting zoo. So it really felt like a family event. And that's, I think, what we want to see across our colleges, even if you don't have goats on campus. And then finally, to bring us home, these are some images from East LA College and the nurse pinning ceremony last December. If you've ever seen one of these ceremonies, it's for graduates of nursing programs. And one of the most significant moments is when someone that the student admires gives a pin that signifies that that student has graduated and intends to become a registered nurse. At East LA College, the family member or friend or partner of the student's choice presents that pin to the graduate. And these are 2 photos of family members, including children of the graduates pinning their parents to recognize that accomplishment. So I just want to thank those on the line for all that they're doing across our colleges and end with these images, which is what I think we're working towards every day. Thank you. Oh, most important, I get to make the handoff. So to speak about 2881 are our colleagues at the CSUs, and Liz is going to lead the way.
Thank you, Kelly. That was great. Really interesting to hear your work and what you've been doing. So good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be able to be here with you today and to be part of this work. I'm also very grateful to Assemblymember Berman for his work on creating this pathway and the catalyst for our system to advance student-parent success. Today, I am pleased to share our system-wide progress on implementing AB 2881, data we've collected from the fall 2023 semester, and how we plan to continue and innovate and improve on providing support for our pregnant and parenting student population. Next slide. So our collective work began shortly after AB 2881 was signed into law. And knowing that in order to comply with a July 1st implementation deadline, we quickly got to work on designing and developing an innovative technical solution for our student information system that could be used by all 23 campuses across the CSU system. And we needed to get that in place and operationalized in time for the next available priority registration window, which was October 2023 for spring 24 registration at the majority of our campuses. So the technical solution was delivered in July of 23 and was fully implemented across the system on time for this deadline. And then students over September, October timeframe were invited to self-certify in the student system beginning in September. So they were invited through multiple communication channels, including the registration system itself through pop-up messaging. So I also want to share that our basic needs and housing constituency group and our campus registrars are working in partnership alongside the priority registration work to make sure that the parenting students on our campuses are receiving communications not only about priority registration, but also about other wraparound support services. So on the next few slides here, I'm going to go through the data with you, and just please keep in mind that this is self-reported. So we're likely to see increases in these numbers over time. So next slide, please. Overall, we're sitting at just shy of about 2% of our CSU students reporting that they have at least one dependent under the age of 18. And that 1.87% there has been broken down on this slide by post-baccalaureate or graduate students and undergraduate students, and then also by class level. So on the class level chart, you can see that freshmen and sophomores are at about 1% each, and juniors and seniors make up the majority in addition to our graduate students. Next slide. So on this chart, the data has been disaggregated by underrepresented minorities and first generation. So for those of you familiar with the CSU's Graduation Initiative 2025, underrepresented minority is one of the ways that we have been disaggregating our data all the way back to 2015 when this graduation initiative started. And on the next slide, I will show you that data in a further disaggregated way. But what I found interesting here is the much higher percentages within the 1.87% of parenting students who are either or both of the first generation and URM categories. Next slide. So here the underrepresented minority data has been disaggregated by IPED's ethnicity categories. So you'll notice that compared to the averages of all students, Black and Latinx represent the higher percentages of parenting students than the rest of our ethnic categories. So this is just our first foray into exploring this data, and I am again expecting that the numbers of self-reported pregnant and parenting students will continue to grow across the system. Next slide, please. So we are continuing to improve on our communications, outreach, and our business practices. Currently, the Chancellor's Office has given each campus the option of either offering priority registration within class level. So if you're a freshman, you get to register ahead of all the other freshmen and so on. Or at what we call the priority one space with the other special populations that are in priority one registration as well, like active duty veterans, athletes, EOP students, foster youth, etc. And so with national estimates on pregnant and parenting students being upwards of 20 to 30%, we chose to proceed initially with some caution and flexibility on how priority registration was provided to students. Ultimately, though, our goal is to move toward more of a strategic and data-driven class scheduling approach for all students, where we're creating class schedules based on actual course demand through a project we're calling the Digital Planner Modernization Project, and that is underway now. So I would like to thank you very much for listening to our progress on this work, and I will now pass it over to my wonderful colleague, Laura Yeager.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you all today. I'm just going to wait a minute for my slides. All right, here we go. So I am Laura Yeager. I'm the University Registrar and Director of Veteran Services at Fresno State. And I'm going to share with you today about our campus implementation process and what we did to implement AB 2881. So go ahead, next slide. So I broke it down into basically 3 categories. I'm going to share with you some of our initial discussions regarding the legislation, talk to you about how we defined priority registration. As my colleague Liz mentioned earlier, campuses kind of defined it in different ways. And then I will share with you our campus timeline of our implementation, and then share with you some lessons learned and what types of ongoing conversations we're having here in Fresno. Go ahead. All right, so as we met to review the legislation when it did pass, kind of the first step that we wanted to look at was updating our website. And it was interesting because on our campus, we had kind of pockets of different groups around the campus that were supporting student parents in maybe different ways or similar ways. And so we really had to take time to determine, where is this going to live? Who is going to maintain this support for these students? And so these are some of the questions that we asked during our initial conversations. And ultimately, it was decided as of right now that it is living with our Student Health and Counseling Center on our campus. So I will share a little bit in more detail about the question regarding priority registration on the next slide, please. So definitely as university registrar, this is the part that I play the largest role in, is implementing the priority registration piece. So during fall 23, again, as Liz had mentioned, since by the time we had started talking about this in the spring of 23, we were already underway with our fall 23 registration cycle. So we were looking towards implementation during fall 23 for the upcoming spring 24 registration. So in the fall of 23, our campus had 2 definitions of what priority means. And so I listed those here. We had a priority group and then an early group. And on our campus, we determined that these parent scholars, also is what Fresno State is calling this group, we wanted to give them the early priority, which means earlier appointment date based on their class level. And we determined that because with the mod that the chancellor office delivered to us, we could opt in to have the students submit documentation to verify their dependent status, or not have the student complete documentation. And our campus voted not to have the student submit any type of verification. And so because we weren't requiring that, we felt the early registration group was maybe more appropriate. For the other groups like veterans, foster youth, they do have to go through a verification process. So in the future, I think if we're going to revisit that and talk about, okay, can we support, do we have the resources to support that verification process? And if so, then let's move them to the other group. I do want to share too that actually, because of the language that our campus had previously, priority and early, we received multiple complaints actually from students that didn't feel early registration was priority. And so that definitely brought the attention to our campus to adopt better language, to be more intentional, to make sure students understood that they do have priority. So now we have language adopted with priority 1 registration groups and priority 2 registration groups. So definitely wanted to share that with you all today in case you do have similar language on your campus and what you might want to discuss for future implementation. Go ahead for the next slide. Okay, so here's a little bit about our timeline. As I shared, we started the discussions on our campus in early spring 2023. And so while I was involved in March in those conversations, I believe there were a couple meetings ahead of that with my colleagues in the Student Health and Counseling Center, as well as some faculty on our campus. And what I really appreciated about our campus is that even in the initial discussions, we had representatives from both student affairs and academic affairs at the table. And I think that was really key to the success and effectiveness of our implementation on our campus, is that we did have that cross-collaborative effort between our divisions. So spring, we started talking about it, making plans. We started updating our website. As Liz mentioned, the CEO delivered that mod to help campuses with the priority registration piece. So we were able to get that delivered to our campus in summer, July, August. And then we went live with that in September for our spring 2024 registration period. And so September, we were really trying to communicate to students, letting them know that this was now available and that what steps they needed to take to self-certify. December, I noted that on here because that's when we made the change to our priority registration language. So they moved from the early group to a priority 2 group. And then I put a note on here about February 2024, which is most recently, because once we went through one registration cycle, I'll share a little bit about some lessons learned on the next slide. But here's a brief snapshot of just the numbers we've seen on our campus so far. So we started with 816 in spring 24 registration. And for fall 24, although we haven't prepared it or finalized that yet, we're already looking at close to 1,100 students. So it's about 5% of our population right now. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, so some lessons learned from our group, definitely how we communicate this better to students. I think we're trying to determine the needs of the students, how we communicate to them, who's going to communicate, those different types of things that, of course, we have challenges, I'm sure, across all campuses and different efforts of how we get students in. The second thing I mentioned, the use of student groups. I know the community college presentation shared that that's what they use too. So now that we've identified a student group that we're using for the priority registration piece, we kind of re-evaluated that and determined that we need another student group, because the priority registration will remove students once the dependent becomes 18. And so what can our Student Health and Counseling Center still do for those students? They still want to provide those resources and opportunities, even though they may not qualify for priority registration. So we're having to now create another student group that they're going to start tracking now in this second semester. So just one thing to think about, we wish we would have started that in our initial efforts. Different ongoing conversations at Fresno State. So again, we definitely recommend having that cross collaboration between academic and student affairs, just because the different divisions reach students differently. And so making sure that everyone is aware of the information and resources and support that these students can have. We are starting to look at our student parent data and determining what we can do with that. So some ideas, can we look at their graduation rates here? I know Liz shared the URM and other data points. So we're still trying to see what that looks like. Again, making sure students know where they go to self-certify so that we can capture that data. Our campus will also be launching a Parent Scholar Advisory Council in the fall of 2024. And then again, we will just continue targeted efforts to communicate to students for events, hosting different programs, activities, and resources on our campus. Go ahead. That's it. I provided my email. If anyone has any questions, happy to help respond to that. And now you will hear from our colleagues at the UC. So Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be. I see on the chat we have some East Coast colleagues joining us. So I'd like to thank Michelson 20MM for hosting this webinar and the community for supporting this really important discussion. Thank you as well, Berman, for being here to support the community. While I'm also the project and policy analyst for basic needs at UCOP, I am a student parent myself. I am pursuing my doctorate in public policy as a student parent, and I spent most of my time in higher education as a student parent. This is a bill that's near and dear to my heart. So I'll be providing a brief overview of some efforts UC has made to implement AB 2881 and lessons learned from a system-wide perspective. One of the most important efforts to support the implementation of this bill system-wide was to ensure our UCOP and campus leadership was aware of the importance of this bill and the requirements of the bill, with presentations and support for our campus senior staff. One way we did this was produce an extensive system-wide guidance document for all campuses to access at any time. Legislative language can at times feel unwieldy for our colleagues on the ground, and we wanted to be sure they had access to resources to help them through the process. This document provides a breakdown of the legislative language and immediately usable assets to aid in implementation. This document is publicly available for anyone to view at UCOP's Basic Needs website, and I'm happy to provide that link later. Since then, I'm proud to say all 10 of our campuses have priority registration for parenting students, with some campuses way ahead of the game, with priority registration in place well before 2881. Student parents are identified through a variety of means, including participation in student parent support services and financial aid. We are currently discussing how to best balance the administrative burden of parenting students and accessing priority registration and self-identifying with verification processes if needed. The goal is to provide a variety of means for parenting students to identify in a way that does not make them feel stigmatized as we learn more. All 10 of our UC campuses also have basic needs centers with highly skilled staff who do outreach and application assistance for campus, community, and public programs, including WIC, CalFresh, and housing supports. Campuses also include information on CalFresh orientations whenever possible. And our basic needs centers often work alongside parenting student support programs and services to direct students to resources and helps them apply for community campus and public programs. Something we immediately noticed was that campuses had a lot to learn from one another and gain support from one another. In November 2023, UC started a system-wide community of practice for pregnant and parenting students, led in partnership with our campus co-chairs, one of whom you will hear from today. This space brings representatives from all 10 campuses together to discuss the current successes, challenges, needs of our parenting students, and how we can creatively solve the problems on a monthly basis. Together, we learn from one another, support one another, and collaborate to solve these common challenges. Most importantly, student parents themselves are able to interact with students, faculty, and other staff in the community to voice their needs and generate solutions. We have also prioritized educating the community more about parenting students. This February, the California Higher Education Basic Needs Alliance hosted a tri-segmental summit with UC system-wide and campus leadership teams as an active part of the process. Representatives from all three public segments came together to discuss basic needs, and the student parent community showed up, and we represented. There were several dynamic presentations on the disproportionate impact of basic needs and financial insecurities for parenting students. Students' voices were heard, and colleagues from across California and as far as DC came together to support one another and strategize the next steps for supporting this population. I'd also like to recognize that AB 2881 brought to the forefront the incredible work of many of our UC faculty and staff who are already doing this work to support parenting students. Many of these colleagues have been diligently supporting parenting students and been a part of the basic needs movement for many years, and we are grateful to learn from their wisdom. Perhaps most critically, AB 2881 has opened up ongoing conversations within and among campuses, UCOP, other colleges and universities, and public programs. We have learned more about the unique needs of parenting students and what we need to do to improve resources. We've asked ourselves, who are our parenting students and how are we defining them? How are we identifying them in our data systems? Like many systems, we have various means of identifying parenting students, but how are we consolidating that? What resources are parenting students access? How can we better coordinate among our campuses to provide support and share knowledge? Most importantly, how can we do better to support this amazing, resilient population? How can we learn from them to better care for one another and create community? As a parenting student, I can say there's nothing like a parenting student network to teach you about true community and caring for one another multi-generationally. Our system has made much progress, but there's much work to be done. We need a better way to identify parenting students and get them into our data systems. And we are so happy to learn from other institutions and segments that have also done this work. We are grateful for the students, the faculty, and the staff that advocated for this population, and most especially the student parents themselves for raising their voices, and all the faculty and staff that have been diligently supporting them for years. UCOP is thrilled to support our campuses and excited to see how much we can do together in the years to come. With that, I will pass it off to Marissa Weiss, Transfer and Retention Specialist at UC Davis, and the campus co-lead for our system-wide community of practice to discuss their leadership in this space.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. Yeah, it's what a nice crowd we have here. Very exciting. I wanted to put in the chat, I just dumped a bunch of things in there, but my email address and then the links to some of our related websites. So hopefully that will be helpful. And specifically in terms of contacting me, we do have a group. I see many familiar names on the call. There's a group of folks that meet monthly, people who work with student parent programs from across the country. And if an informal gathering of other people who get it would be for you, please just send me a message. We're happy to have you join. It's been a really great space. So right, I'm Marissa Weiss. She, they works for me. I'm over at UC Davis in the Transfer and Reentry Center. And yeah, I wanted to quickly note, I see it's great to see so many community college folks on the call. Right, so since I'm in the Transfer Center, you're near and dear to us, and that we know about 90% of our undergrad student parents are transfers coming from predominantly folks up north, but we get a lot of students from Southern California as well. But yeah, Sac City, Solano Community, DVC, Sierra, ARC are big senders, but also Los Medanos, CCSF, College of Marin, Contra Costa, Napa Valley, San Joaquin, Santa Monica, Shasta. So would love to partner with you all at some point to make the transition as seamless as possible for our students. So yeah, if we want to keep going. Thank you. So priority registration. So I've been at UC Davis for almost 4 years. I know there's some East Coasters on the call. I was at Rhode Island College, a small public school in Rhode Island. Well, everything's small in Rhode Island, right? But anyway, and I came specifically to UC Davis to work with student parents and returning students. And I was really fortunate that when I got here in summer 2020, what we called OWLS, our Older Wiser Learners student organization, was already putting forth a proposal to add priority registration for student parents and caregivers. So, you know, in some ways we were ahead, but then I think AB 2881 helped really push our progress along. So we applied, there's a process through our office of the university registrar. And we used, at that time, you know, what did we know about our student parent population? We had, so UCOP released a report in which they estimated that 1.1% of UC Davis undergrads are student parents. And the estimate is based off of a question, I believe it's based off of the question in our UQs, which is, gosh, University of California Undergraduate Experience Survey, a question that asks, it's a very interesting question, and it's something about if you live with your children or something like this. It's not exactly, are you a student parent? So we believe that the 1.1% is probably an undercount. But we used that number to bring to the registrar, and they granted the application. So we began implementation in winter 2021. And I have sprinkled along here some pictures of our fabulous student parents who really, you know, we can't forget that they're the heart of our work. So we can move forward. And then here was our initial flyer. And I put our flyers in because I wanted to mention how we've changed our application process. So if you see here, there's an application and it gives a deadline. So initially we didn't know who the students were, so we needed to really do outreach and ask them to apply. And it was what I thought was a simple form, but I like how some of the other panelists have mentioned, you know, adjusting their process along the way. And I think we've done this as well to respond to, right, student feedback and even just things we were learning from partners and other institutions. And at the statewide meeting in September, folks were saying, right, we shouldn't ask people to justify why they need priority registration. You're a student parent, so you obviously need it and should get it. So we've, in that way, adjusted our application to take any of those questions off. But we've also adjusted the process even further, which I'll discuss in the next slide. So our initial run at priority registration was outreaching to every campus entity that seemed to be in contact with folks. Financial aid sent messages out on our behalf. Housing, we reached out strongly to our advising community because if you're in contact with no one else on campus, you usually meet at least once with an academic advisor. So it was helpful to go through them. We do have an internal childcare grant that many of our students receive, so they know who a lot of student parents are. And then since we know that so many of our student parents are transfers, we did a lot of outreach from our office. And you'll note, yeah, the UCs have work to do. You know, we have the smallest numbers out of the CCs and the CSU of student parents, and I have lots of thoughts about why that is. I can maybe summarize that a bit at the end. But when we did our first round, where it was very much trying to beat the bushes to find who students' parents were and get them to fill out an online form, when we first were implementing, we were getting numbers like 65 or so. We knew there were more, but how would we find them? And really the game changer for us was when the UC admissions application added the question, and it just simply asks, do you have children? And then once that question was added, we were able to access that information. And then now we knew that, oh, there's like, you know, many more students who are saying that they're parents than are actually, you know, finding our form and filling it out. So in that interim process, we were still we were then emailing all the students who said they were parents on the UC admissions application and having them fill out a form. But definitely in the spirit of removing barriers, moving forward now, we just, hey, if you said you have children on the admissions application, then we're coding you as a student parent and giving you priority registration. So I estimate that those numbers are going to continue to go up as we make it easier for people to identify. So we can move forward. And then our latest flyer really highlights that. And I hope it'll just be so much easier for our students. So now they don't need to do anything. So if you said you had children on the UC application, then you'll receive priority. The only time, the only time we do still have the application on there because right, being a student parent is not, we're only collecting it at one point in time. I love what the community colleges had shared about asking at registration, and I'd love for eventually UC Davis and the other UCs to be implementing that. But until we have that going, what we do is if you become a parent after admission, or maybe you skip that question on the admissions application, we do still have the online application, so people can still join the list for priority after being admitted. We specifically have a welcome new Aggies form. So if people are expecting, in addition to their family, they can fill it out. And then I reach out to say, hey, let's, I'll add you to priority registration, but also, hey, let's chat about what your plans are and what the resources are on campus. And you can't see behind me, but I've also become, I feel like a consignment place for maternity clothes. So it's kind of nice. Oh, okay, time check. Thank you. So we can keep going. Briefly, these are some quotes of our students saying how much priority registration was helpful to them. Right, helps me take the classes I need at a time that still allows me to pick up my kids from school on time. Yeah, not knowing when your classes are creates a lot of anxiety. So if we can take that out of the process for students, it's really helpful. And then, yeah, especially, gosh, our single moms who have no family support for the UCs, we have a lot of people who move here and don't know anybody and don't have anyone to rely on. So having a schedule that fits for them is really helpful. We can move forward. And I thought this one was really poignant about registering for classes is super stressful as my schedule affects my children's schedule, and I need as much advance warning as possible to make arrangements for them. Even worse is when a class fills up that I need to take and I have to wait list. I can't make any plans for their childcare until I know what my final schedule is, which means a lot of last minute scrambling. That whole wait list thing is it's really stressful for our students. So when they get priority, it's usually for the first day of registration, and I know it's just been a game changer for so many of them. So we can move forward. And then the student parent website. Yeah, we had started it since we don't have a student parent center per se. We kind of made the website the virtual student parent center. So we work very closely with our Women's Resources and Research Center on the website. We have a very vibrant newsletter, and you don't have to be a UC Davis community member to join. If you go to our website and just click on the join the newsletter, happy to have you check it out. Right, we have upcoming events on there, key resources, and then, yeah, we really appreciated the guidance from AB 2881 about what to put on the website. We hadn't had those tax credit resources on there, so we added those pieces, and it's spurred conversation for what else should really be on there. And then the link added to the homepage, is it as prominent as we might want? Not exactly, but it's on there, and yeah, and we credit the legislation for, allowing us to make that ask and have it granted. So it was very helpful. And yeah, if you're curious, oh, it's okay. The bottom pictures, we have a Princess Pals student organization on campus who came and did some great stuff with our students. The chemistry club did some experiments, and then we do campus trick-or-treating each year. So there you go, but we can keep moving forward. And yeah, when we launched the website, we did our best to advertise as much as we could. And I think the advertising push is still ongoing. So whatever we can do to get the word out is helpful. So we can move on. And just a snapshot of the website. Yeah, so our different areas that we follow, and we're looking to add a tab for faculty and staff with some syllabus language and guidance on how best to support students. So that's in the works. Yeah, and AB 2881 mentioned campus orientation. And also feel free, Queen and others, to put in the chat if I'm totally running over and need to stop talking. I want to respect time. Yeah, this year we really, again, with the backing of 2881, where we were able to work much more closely with our orientation folks. We gave them the list this year of our incoming student parents, and they made outreach and phone calls. They also gave them their schedules in advance. So if they needed to work things out, and noted which sessions were family friendly. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. So yes, we work closely with our orientation folks. And then if we want to go to the next slide, because this is the last one in closing thoughts. Yeah, I'd love to see us prompt students to update their student parent status at their time of registration for courses. I think we should all have student parent centers. I love what happens at the CalWorks offices and community colleges, and I think we need to have parallel efforts at the UCs and CSUs. And then nationally, I know there was someone from the National Women's Law Center on the call. Hey, anything you could do to prompt the feds that NCES and IPEDS data should also be collecting student parent status, and I think that would be a huge game changer. Oh. No, I don't think, sorry, Lynn. I don't think any of us at any level of the California schools are all mandated to have student parent centers. But to me, that's the next piece, is that we're getting all of the data and policy stuff together. But that would be so wonderful to have centralized places that students can find easily for all the resources. So that's my plug for that move. But thank you for the opportunity. I'll hand it back over to Quina.
Thank you to all of our panelists for this amazing presentation. I want to hand it over quickly to AJ Johnson from California Competes and Crystal Palais to give us a little bit of insight about AB 2458.
Thank you so much, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is AJ with California Competes, and can people see the presentation slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we are one of a few co-sponsors here for a new bill introduced this year, AB 2458, that Assemblymember Mark Berman is championing and mentioned at the beginning of the call. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. Right now, student parents are not receiving the full federal financial aid that they're entitled to, and we're leaving money on the table. And so what we want to do with this bill is actually bring more resources and support student parents so that they can succeed. Everything you need to know about the bill is, I just dropped a link in the chat. This website has the fact sheet, bill language, an FAQ, toolkit support for social media, and ways that you can sign on and send in a letter of support to assist student parents statewide. What the bill will do is it will, as I said, enhance financial aid access. We are leaving money on the table. It will require automatic cost of attendance adjustments for student parents. And that's a really technical process. Right now, it's a form that students have to fill out, and Crystal, a student parent, will tell us about the current process and how we can improve it in a little bit. We want the state and each campus to uniformly collect student parent data, and we want to include that data in the Cradle to Career longitudinal data system so we can know if we're equitably serving student parents, and if we're not, we want to develop recommendations to get there, like the ones you heard from each of our segments today. We also want more information to go out to student parents. We want them to know what their true cost of attendance is, how they can access other cash aid like tax credits, free tax filing services to get those thousands of dollars to help them rise out of poverty and succeed in college. And we want them to have the right contact information to know who to go to in financial aid. And we want them to be able to plan for college with these net price calculators that are supposed to tell students how much it will cost them to go and complete their degree. Right now, these systems assume that they don't have children, that they don't have extra food, transportation, housing, and childcare expenses. So we want students to have that financial increase to help boost and support them. As folks earlier mentioned, a lot of our student parents are low income and need this type of support to get through their studies. What the bill essentially will do, it will build off Assembly Bill 2881 by using that information about who we know is a student parent, by collecting that and then offering them additional financial aid resources from the start of their semester. We also use in this bill a broader definition of student parent so that we can be more inclusive. And what I'm going to share now is just how you can support student parents and the GAINS Act, the GAINS for Student Parents Act. So first, I saw in the chat, some people sent in their letter of support today. Thank you so much. We really need your help to get this bill passed. Assemblymember Berman is a champion and is just hoping that all of the organizations and individuals would do this by the beginning of next week. The deadline is actually on Wednesday at noon, so please get those letters in by Monday, like the successful achievers we are. If you're not part of an organization, you can also sign on as an individual. You can sign on as a faculty or a student parent and support that letter. We'll send that in for all of those individuals on Monday. We've got some social media posts. And if you'd like to join us and a number of student parents at the Capitol on April 2nd, we hope you'll consider joining us on that day. I'm going to skip this session and turn it over to Crystal to just tell us why you're supporting AB 2458.
Thank you, AJ. Good afternoon. I'm Crystal Pale, student parent from Sacramento, working on my BA at UC Santa Cruz. My journey to higher education is rooted in my children and breaking barriers. I support AB 2458 as it aligns with my experiences as a low-income student of color. Parenthood and studies have been hard. I wake up, take care of my kids, do my homework, my internships, manage the household, take my children to their sports, childcare, and to afford everything, I work 16-hour weekend shifts as a freelance CNA. This is exhausting. Having to balance this all left me struggling with my academics and my children. My true cost of attendance is more than double compared to my non-parenting peers to meet the basic needs of myself and my children. Getting financial aid is daunting. At a point, I considered part-time study or dropping out because I couldn't figure out how to make ends meet as a full-time student, even though I knew this path was a path to economic freedom. However, thanks to the support of various programs, I secured a cost of attendance adjustment and dependent care allowance that raised my annual aid. This tailored support allowed me to pursue my education and prioritize my children at the same time. I urge you to consider AB 2458, a bill that could remove hours of systemic struggle and allow student parents to focus on what really matters, being a parent and studying. AB 2458 would streamline access to benefits that student parents are already eligible for. We're not asking for anything new or additional. We're asking for student parent expenses to be treated the same way we treat other student expenses like housing, food, and transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. I know we're at time, so I'll hand it back to Queena. We did have a few other questions that may be able to be answered during Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, AJ and Crystal. The Michelson Center for Public Policy is really excited to co-sponsor this bill and can't wait to see how it continues to support parenting students. So friends, we hope that you walk away from today's event informed, inspired, and better equipped to support pregnant and parenting students on your campus. Before you head out, we ask that you please take our 1-minute post-event evaluation. The link will be dropped in the chat as I close out for today. The State of Pregnant and Parenting Students in California was presented by the Michelson 20mm Foundation as part of our mission to advance equity for all students and families. We want to once again thank our partners, Ascend at the Aspen Institute, Blue Shield of California Foundation, the California Community Foundation, California Competes, the Education Trust West, and Tipping Point Community for making today happen. We invite you to join us on this journey. Continue to ask the questions about the work that is being done. How are you serving pregnant and parenting students? Who are they and how are you reaching them? How are their voices being heard and incorporated into your equity work? The recording of today's discussion will be posted on our YouTube channel, the Michelson 20mm Foundation, and will be emailed to you all tomorrow. To learn more about our work with pregnant and parenting students, visit our website using the link in the chat. Additionally, if you or organizations want to become part of our work focused on supporting pregnant and parenting students, please reach out to me personally at q.hong@20mm.org. You can also stay engaged by signing up for our newsletter at 20mm.org to receive news and updates about our pregnant and parenting student project, as well as our upcoming events. Finally, save our new date. We had previously mentioned that our Student Parent Summit would be held in August. However, based on our feedback, we've secured a new venue and date for September 6, 2024 with our partners at LA Trade Tech for our second Student Parent Summit. Our first gathering last fall brought together over 130 practitioners, advocates, and allies, as well as student parents, to continue to build the movement in support of the student population. We hope you will join us, and more information will be coming out in the coming weeks. Thanks again for joining us today and for centering the needs of our pregnant and parenting students. Have a great rest of your day.